It's been a while since the last update, and today is going to be kind of a big one. Before I dive into it, I want to thank my Patreon supporters and everyone who's been liking and commenting on these devlogs so far. It helps a lot, and if you want to support the project beyond YouTube, you can find out how to do so in the description below. Now with that said, let's dive into it and see what I've been up to for the past couple of months. Firstly, I've managed to get the game running on Windows in a packaged state with the server being somewhat ready to be deployed, not in a final state but ready for people outside of my network to test and offer feedback. If you're a Patreon supporter and join the Discord, simply reach out in one of the channels and I'll message you the details on how to download it, and when you're able to log in and test everything out. I'll be working on getting a Steam page set up for testers. That way, when I update and add stuff, you don't have to re-download the entire 12 plus gigabyte client. Also, I've packaged a Linux client that should be able to work without much headache, fingers crossed. Now there still is a mountain of things that need to be done before I consider this ready for an alpha, but every day I chip away at the task list. Speaking of the task list, one of the major milestones was enabling the full functionality of combat modes. Combat modes you can think of like condensed macros of old MMORPGs, and let me show you what I mean. First, we'll open up the combat mode menu by pressing X. This shows us the current combat mode we're previewing, and the combat modes bound to our many player states. At the moment, we don't have any bound, and this is only the default state. So let's name some modes and set up some gear sets so we can better separate everything that will be happening. With that being done, let's test to make sure nothing is defined prior to setting up our states. So we'll simply just engage with this dummy and see if our gear changes. Observing no change, we'll bind gear set 1 to the engage state under default mode, which should equip our sword and shield along with some pants and a new chest piece. We'll engage with the dummy again, and boom, the sword and shield along with the chest and legs now equipped. Perfect. Now we could change the default set on our first action skill to gear set 2, but you've seen that before. So let's bind a gear set to a new combat mode. We already named 2 of them, attack and defense, so let's bind 1 to attack. Well first, middle mouse button on our first ability, click the drop down box and select bind new mode. Looks like we haven't bound it to our class yet, so let's do that now by clicking the drop down box in the state menu and binding attack mode. Now that we have it bound, we can change it in the ability menu, and we'll bind gear set 2 to first strike. Now we'll use it and see if anything changes about our character. It didn't, and that is because we are still in default mode. We'll switch modes with either Q or E and try again. This time though, you'll notice that the gear didn't change back to our engage set. That's because the engage gear set that we set up was for the default combat mode, not the new attack mode that we just set up. We'll go ahead and fix that now with gear set 3, which should equip the robe and the helmet. With the helmet equipped, we'll change back to the default combat mode and observe gear set 1 being equipped again. And honestly, that was the easiest demonstration I could think of. And yes, this works on precast and midcast abilities as well. So with only 2 modes and 1 ability, you could have 4 separate gear sets bound to 1 spell. Kind of overwhelming, isn't it? I hope you can imagine the multitude of possible scenarios. An example of one would be changing modes to deal with a boss's phase change or ability. Honestly, the possible combinations are near endless. Let's rest our minds now and head outside the city past the mountain to the Lumine Plains. This zone is massive. Doesn't have enemies yet, but I've been designing their movesets and some animations for them, and we'll share more at a later date. Also, zoning in for the mountains gives you a view of Shore City, Elmwood, and Wheat Hills, all within view, which I love and cannot wait for you all to experience it firsthand. I've been practicing with some destruction of Zatar architecture just outside the mountain to hint at some backstory of why Zatar is the way it is. There will be more to show at a later date, but I need to work on it. I'm applying to Epic Beggar Grants today, and if you're watching this video, then most likely I've already done it. Wish me luck on that journey, and I hope I've shown enough work for a small amount of support, but if not, then it's business as usual. I'll try again after I've added some story and done some performance capture. And with that said, I think that's all I have regarding the game. Outside of that, sorry it took so long to release. I took a vacation, got sick for a week after the vacation, and then ran into a ton of issues with Unreal. It's all fixed now, and this next month I'm going to have a lot more time to dedicate to straight development. I'll be working on setting up a Kickstarter, which will require more footage, and I don't want to fake the footage, so until it's actually ready to show, I think things are just going to stay the way they are for the time being. But the things I want to finish for next month are more weapon models, more weapon actions, a streamlined way for players to select their classes, and of course, more enemies. I've talked enough for today, so let me just say to everyone still watching, thank you for the support. Leave a like, it helps the video reach new people, and comment on what you would like to see in a future devlog or in the game itself. If you want to support the project or me, head on over to the Patreon and become a supporter. Thanks for watching, and until the next one.